I'm almost embarrassed to say now that our quote unquote break even dollar figure for any given month was $20,000. And now I would say that most shops have to do that in a week at a minimum.
This is Shop Talk Her Way with JeanAnn SaintGrace.
As a shop owner, did you ever wake up in the morning and wonder how you got here? It happened to me. Welcome to the very first episode of Shop Talk Her Way with JeanAnn SaintGrace. I'm very excited to bring this to you with the help and sponsorship of WorldPack and the WorldPack Training Institute, our industry partners in training and in bringing you the parts you need when you need them, and hopefully right the first time. So I would almost consider myself an accidental shop owner. And it's funny because it was never my dream. It definitely was not on my list of things to do. I grew up in the trucking industry, and my life trajectory was to go to college, get a degree in agricultural business, go back home, and take over the trucking company. And guess what? That didn't happen. And we could blame somebody. If we wanted to blame someone, the person to blame would be the technician that I fell in love with. He changed the trajectory of my whole life. And he was a flat rate technician. He started off in the industry at 16 with, he was coming out of a high school work program where he got out of school 2 or 3 days a week in the afternoon so he could go work in the shop and get paid rather than sit in a high school and be bored. And that probably honestly saved his life. It shifted the trajectory of his life as well. And he was a great tech. He really was a tremendous tech. And through him, I lived the good, the bad, and the ugly of not only being in a shop, but being a shop owner and also being in the industry kind of from start to finish. So, just a little more to flesh me out. I grew up in the trucking industry. I grew up in an agricultural area. We had a short haul trucking company, and we towards the heyday of the business, we specialized in hauling agricultural products. And so I grew up in and around farmland. I grew up with animals. I That's where I came from. So when I went to school for agricultural business, and to say auto repair was not even on my radar would be an understatement until I fell in love with a technician. And like I said, he was great. He'd been in the industry about 10 years at the time that I met him, so from 16 to 25. And at that time in the early 90s, he was a flat rate tech who worked probably 60 to 80 hours a week and was flagging about 100 hours a week. He wrote his own service, he ordered his own parts, he sold his own jobs, and he was great at it. He really was. It was his dream to open an auto repair shop. And after the thought that I was going to go home and run the auto repair business, or I'm sorry, run the trucking business, went kaput. He wanted to own a shop, and I had business background. My degree had a strong business flavor, lots of accounting, lots of bookkeeping, lots of processes and procedures. I knew a lot about real estate and finance and appraisal. Those were all things that came out of my degree. And I loved it. I honestly thought that agriculture was my calling and that's where I was going to land. And that's not how the plan went. So after a few years, we got married, and after a couple years, he decided it was time for him to have his own shop. Previously, he'd worked in gas stations that had garages attached, so that's where he came from. And his experiences, at least from my perspective, were that as a flat rate tech, we know how that goes, right? If the work is good and it's flowing, the money is good. If there's no work, there's no money. And I can honestly tell you there were holiday weeks where he sat on his toolbox and watched all the traffic go by because there was no movement in the shop. And it always struck me as odd. It always struck me as, why would you keep doing this job if that's how it goes? And I learned obviously a lot about that, and that was the way of the world. And it didn't matter that in the state of California at that time, flat rate wasn't quite legal. And and it's still not really. Um, and there's labor laws and wage and hour laws and all kinds of things that make it really not a good practice in the state of California, and questionable across our industry. I'm probably going to hit a hot button with that, but we'll talk about that later. So, once he decided that it was time for him to have his own shop, he had clientele. And at this point, he had been in the industry for over 15 years. And it was kind of a no brainer. And I guess we were relatively young and kind of dumb and figured, hey, we're just going to open a shop. So one really rainy Saturday morning, we were driving around our town and there was just really nothing that fit the bill. And so we had a large entrepreneurial seizure and decided we were going to build a shop. And so one of the last corner lots on the main drag in our town was available for sale. We ended up purchasing it. We ended up building a really nice 4-bay shop, and we ran it together for 15 years. My role in the shop, as I saw it at the beginning, was the support team. I knew how to do payroll. I knew how to do accounting. I knew how to organize an office. I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to answer the phone. These were the roles that I thought I would play. And in a pretty naive way, I thought I was going to be like the shop wife, and I was going to come in, do the books, leave, have a little bit of freedom, a little bit of, that role. And there's no doubt I became the supporting cast, but in a much deeper role than I ever expected. It became very much a partnership. And my husband was an excellent technician. He was a tech. If nobody else could figure it out, he could figure it out. He just had that gift. He had the touch, the feel, whatever you want to call it. He had that in him. And if it was broken, pretty much he could fix it. So it felt natural for me to start learning the ropes of the business from the ground up, answering the phones, making the schedule. Started off writing up oil changes. We had a really archaic DOS based writing system with one of those great dot matrix printers, and it worked really well for a couple of years until we found Mitchell through AC Delco. And it worked. It honestly, I love Mitchell to this day. If I could get them to fix a few things, I'd be super grateful, and it would be perfect. But and that's not to take away from other companies like Techmetric or Shopware or any of the other ones that are out there. Everybody finds one that they like, right? If you could ask 10 people what the best shop management system is out there, you'd get 10 different answers because everybody loves what they love. So we that really helped, switching from a really archaic DOS based system to a Windows based system became much better. That opened up our world a lot. We could save revisions. We could have multiple revisions on a ticket. It really made our shop hum a lot better. And the biggest challenge was we didn't know what we didn't know. And in those days, we were in the mark everything up 2 times. That'll get you the profit that you need. Um, we had a really low labor rate. I think the first labor rate that we started at in 2000 was $65 an hour. And we charged a little bit more for diagnostics. It, by today's standards, it was not enough and probably wasn't enough then. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Um, and I just honestly had this epiphany in the last few days when I was thinking about, why weren't we making more money in those early days? And it was because when I was in college, all of the problems that they gave us to solve. Do you plant? Do you not plant? What do you do? All the agricultural problems surrounded a break even strategy. What do we have to do to break even? And it was kind of like, if we made a profit, yay, but our goal was break even. And it never ever dawned on me past that. The other thing that was in my mind at that time was I was trained as a tax preparer, and the goal of every business is to minimize taxes. So, how do you minimize taxes? You either have a lot of expenses or you don't charge enough to pay taxes. And we were kind of in the middle ground. I think we were paying ourselves enough, we were paying our team enough, but we were not charging enough. And that's just the truth. And we were probably in the middle of the pack in our town as far as what we were charging and what we were making. And I'm almost embarrassed to say now that our quote unquote break even um, dollar figure for any given month was $20,000 a month. And now I would say that most shops have to do that in a week at a minimum, depending on how big the shop is. For like a two-man, one service advisor team, $20,000 is about the minimum. And that depends on where you're at, what your overhead is, and all those other things that we have to take into account. But nobody ever told me how much money we really needed to make. And, that was in the years from when I was 28 to 38. And so I wasn't thinking that far ahead in the future. 60 seemed like it was a long ways away. 65 seemed even farther. Um, I wasn't really thinking about the future. The biggest concession we made to the future was we did have wills and we did have a simple IRA. And that was about, what was going on. And in 2010 or 2011, I was approached by one of the bigger coaching companies, and they evaluated our financials. And I will never forget exactly where I was standing when this gentleman said to me, "You're in a very dangerous position." And I thought, I don't feel like I'm in danger. What are you talking about? But he had my attention. And he said, "Do you see your bottom line here on your profit and loss?" And I said, "Yeah, I see it." And he goes, "How do you feel about that?" And I said, "I feel fine about it. Like, all the bills are paid. We're getting paid. We're cashing our checks. Everything's good." And he goes, "No, you're in danger." He said, "You're making just enough money to get by, but you're not making enough money to survive, to live through a challenge, to live through an emergency. You're not making enough money." And it kind of set me on my heels a little bit. And then I asked, "Okay, tell me how much." And he said, by their calculation, and this is the calculation we still use today, we should have been putting about 20% on the bottom line. 25 is even better, but 20 at a minimum. And I was honestly a little shocked and I felt a little dumb because I never thought about profit. I just thought about, yeah, we've got enough to pay everything. We broke even. Yay, we broke even. That's a win. And I didn't realize that we weren't looking to the future. So through the next 4 years of working with the coaching company, I learned a lot about profit. I learned to be better at reading my profit and loss statement. I learned how better to track our cost of goods sold. I'd always been good at inventory, but all the costs that actually go into cost of goods sold and what labor margin actually looks like was a mystery to me. Um, and I just really opened my eyes, and it also opened my husband's eyes because he had been a technician. He'd never owned a business. He had never seen HR. He had never seen payroll. He had never been exposed to that side of the business. He just knew that at some point he wanted to own his own shop and run it the way that he wanted. So that was a journey, and it was a journey that had high highs and low lows. We tried to hire multiple service advisors. They just never seemed, regardless of their qualifications, to fit the bill. It could have been that we were both pretty controlling and we wanted things done a certain way. And if somebody couldn't do it our way, we didn't keep them for very long. Um, we had some challenges because we were young shop owners. When we opened the shop, I was 28 and he was 33. So, on more than one occasion, we had employees working for us who were older than we were. And that could go a couple different ways. It could be absolutely fine, or it could be that they were super resentful, didn't respect us, were just there for a paycheck. And one in particular really resented me as a woman giving him directions or asking him to do things. And that one didn't last very long at all. Um, so we lived the growth arc of of a shop owner, from a technician and somebody who grew up in self-employment. I knew what it meant. I knew it was long hours, it was hard hours, it was a lot of time and investment. But again, the goal was always pay the least amount of taxes you can and have a little money in the bank. So we were investing in the building as we were paying it off. So we had the land underneath us also to support us. But it was a pardon my language, a half-assed plan. It was by no means a full plan. And when we started to hit our stride with the coaching company, another thing came to our attention, and that was our retirement was nowhere near good enough. And this is one of the things that I will credit with saving my life as I get deeper um, into my story, and that is that we were advised that we could have what they call a safe harbor 401k. With minimal participation, we could have and put away almost triple what we could with a simple IRA. And when I say it saved my life, it's because things changed drastically in 2015, and I'll tell you the rest of that story here in a minute. But nobody had told me that before. And at that point, I had had two different um, accountants, and the third one was the one who keyed me into this. And I thought, well, there were some bad words said. We could have been putting away like 3 to 4 times as much money over the last 10 years that we've been putting away, and that would have been life-changing money. It was life-changing as it was, but that would have been really life-changing money. So, let me take a break right now again to talk about WorldPack. Shop Talk Her Way is proudly sponsored by WorldPack and the WorldPack Training Institute. They are our industry partners who support the next generation of skilled, confident men and women in the automotive industry. WorldPack delivers OE quality parts from the world's most trusted manufacturers with speed and precision so you can serve your customers with excellence. The WorldPack Training Institute offers top tier technical and business training, empowering professionals at every level to grow, lead, and thrive. WorldPack and the WorldPack Training Institute are our partners committed to elevating our industry and the men and women who power it. And I can't say enough about how grateful I am for WorldPack and WTI for investing in this podcast. It really is a huge deal for me, and I'm super excited to be here and to partner with them. They were wonderful partners to us when we were in our shop. So, back to my story. We figured out a simple IRA. Our salaries came up, our profitability came up, and we started actually having profit on the bottom line. And I'm a stickler for numbers. I am a bookkeeper by trade. I'm an accountant by heart. Everything balanced to the penny and everything was done to the T. And that's something that as a coach and as somebody in the industry that I had seen before, but I hadn't really put a clear eye on it until very recently when I stepped into the coaching world for the automotive industry. And that is a lot of business owners don't know how to read their profit and loss. They're not 100% sure what kind of profits they should be making. They don't know what their labor margins are. They don't know what their parts margins are. And they don't really know what the normal is or what the standard might be. And that can be crippling, just like us, just like we were, babes in the woods thinking, oh, if we can just keep our bills paid and keep cashing our checks, everything will be okay. And it's also funny and surprising to me that I've met business owners who don't want to talk about profit. They do not want to talk about their profit margins. And it finally came out in a conversation that they felt like working for profits was greed. And there's no doubt that there can be people in this industry who are greedy. But I would say 99.9% of the people in this industry have service hearts and service souls, and they just want to do the best for their customer. They're afraid to tell the customer it's going to cost X amount of money to fix their car when they know, their kid's been sick, or they're putting their kids through private school, or their parent just passed away, or they're going through a rough time, and all of a sudden you're going to compound their challenge by giving them some more bad news. And that's a conversation for another podcast. But as a business owner, if you don't take care of your team and your family and your business first, you're not going to be there to serve those people. And by and far, if you have a relationship with those people, if you know their families, if you know enough about them that you know those things, then the worst thing would be that they'd have to go somewhere else for those repairs. And I also want to say, and I'll just kind of do this as an aside right now, that you will never find people with bigger hearts than people in the automotive industry. The shop owners that I have worked with, the service advisors, the technicians, they all have big hearts, and they want to put their Superman or Superwoman cape on and dive in and save the day. I, it's just what I see. And maybe I'm drawn to people like that, but it seems to be across the board that when you get a group of shop owners, technicians, service advisors in a room, the overarching thing is they love saving the day. They want to be there to fix it. They want to put people's fires out for them, hand them the keys to their car in great running condition, and send them on their way. I honestly think that for most of us, or a lot of us, if we could do it for free and somehow pay our bills some other way, we would have done it, because there's nothing better than having somebody come in having a really bad day and have them go out having a better day. So there's that. And I firmly believe that to be true. But back to my story. So, in year 10 of running a business, all of a sudden I have a profit formula in front of me. I have a plan for our future. I have all of these things that I didn't have before. The internet was just starting to become a thing. And so Google was getting Google reviews, and having Facebook wasn't even a thing. The big thing was to um, have a website, getting a website up and running, doing customer retention marketing. All of those things became something that we needed to do. So more jobs for me, because the talent needed to be out in the shop, running the shop, moving the techs, getting the cars in and out. And so I was upping my game as a service advisor over that time. And as we were trying to hire a service advisor, I needed to know, 10% more than they did in order to train them. And so I just kept going. We had really high standards. I wanted my customers to be taken care of in a certain way. In some cases, we had 3 and 4 generations of family members coming in for us to work on their cars, and that meant a lot to me. That meant a tremendous amount to me. That we lived in a small town. We had such good word of mouth. Our customers were our best marketing, and so as as we went through, I'm going to say about half a dozen service advisor candidates, everything from 10 to 15 years of experience on down to didn't know anything. um, we I shouldn't say we stepped back, regrouped, and decided we're just going to run the business. We're going to work on our processes and procedures. And as when we're ready or the right person shows up, we're going to get a service advisor. However, at that point, I was working about 80 hours a week. It was the spring of 2015, and we had just gone to a conference, and one of the topics was managing millennials. And at that time, the thinking on managing millennials, and it's still true, but it's true for people, not just millennials, is that they need like 9 to 12 positive reinforcements every day. And that's pretty true, right? And as a Gen Xer, I was didn't we didn't really have these terms, or it wasn't a big thing on the internet at the time, but as a Gen Xer, in my heart of hearts, I was still living under the theory that if I showed up and did my job every day and nobody noticed, then I was doing a good thing. I got my paycheck, kept my head down, kept the wheels moving, all the balls in the air, and I didn't complain. I just kept moving forward. However, I was solidly burnt out. I was working Monday through Friday, and the shop was open Monday through Friday, so my husband was there with me. He was doing his tech thing. I was doing running the office. As we got more and more into maintenance, helping customers manage their maintenance schedules, it took time. It just took time, and I couldn't in my brain, I couldn't shift gears to where spend a few minutes working on business stuff, shift gears back to service advisor. I had to be in my service advisor mode. Then at the end of the day or on the weekends, I would shift into bookkeeper shop owner mode and do those things. So I was often working till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night during the week. And then on Saturdays or Sundays, I tried to do one or the other, but not both. So the hours were being put in. And I was trying to devise a 5-year plan. My husband was 45, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And I wanted him to be out of the shop by the time he was 50. At 50, he would have been in the industry for 35 years. And I thought, that's enough time. So I was trying to figure out how to make that work. I was trying to figure out how to do it without hiring a service advisor. And I was running myself ragged, hence the accidental shop owner. And I think so many of us shop owners land there because we either feel like there's nobody out there, we can't find help, we're either terrible trainers, we needed to work on our leadership skills, whatever it might have been. For me, full disclosure, I'm a terrible control freak and I wanted things done my way. So luckily, um, we were able to keep things going that way. However, um, it was not sustainable, and it wouldn't have been sustainable. And I didn't have it in me. I didn't feel like I had permission. I don't know if that's the right word. I didn't feel like I could raise my hand and say, this isn't working for me. Even with the coaching company, I didn't feel like I could say, this is too much. I can't take it. I can't do all of this by myself. I just didn't have it in me to quit. And looking back on that now, a lot of life experience in almost 10 years, I can honestly say it wasn't sustainable. I wouldn't have made it. And there was something in me that was telling me, something's got to change, something's got to change. And I'm going to tell you this part of my story, and I'm going to preface it by, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I want you to hopefully learn from my experience without having to go through it yourself. So in the summer of 2015, business was pretty much booming. We had a good solid team of techs. We were running a little lean. It was me, my husband, and 2 really good technicians, a really good B tech and a really good A tech. With my husband and I splitting some of the service advising, him doing the heavy diagnostic stuff. It was humming. It was working, and we were probably on track to have our best year ever. And in that summer, something happened, and my husband went to the doctor, and we found out that he had stage 4 cancer. And he had a stage 4 cancer that was very aggressive. It was already, throughout his body, and he needed an aggressive treatment strategy. And so the whole world changed in that moment. And that is another podcast for what happens when the passion for your business dies. And I can tell you it happened in a heartbeat. It happened with the word melanoma being written on a piece of paper as I listened to my husband's side of the conversation as he talked to the doctor. And I walked away. I closed my door and to my office and um, reevaluated my life in a very short period of time. And the next thing that that happened was the phone rang, and it was a regular customer who needed an oil change. And I can honestly tell you, in that moment, I did not care. I did not care if I changed another oil. I didn't care if we did another cooling system or a timing belt or fixed a fuel pump. I, in that moment, just did not care. And that was the pivot point. That was when my life changed for sure. And as much as I knew a change needed to come, that wasn't how I expected it to happen. That was not by any means my plan. And nor is it anyone's to get a phone call like that. Over the next couple months, we figured out his treatment schedule. We also decided we needed to close the shop. We needed to sell the shop because there was no way I could run it by myself, and there was no way either one of us had the focus to run it with him in the middle of a large health crisis. So, and here's where I was lucky. Because we had worked with a coaching company, we had a business to sell. We had the land to sell, and that would have helped. That would have definitely been something big. But having a business to sell was something else. And the reason we had a business to sell was because we had profit on the bottom line. And we'll talk more about how is a business valued in later episodes, but it basically comes down to how much money are you making on the bottom line, and then it's multiplied by a multiplier depending on multiple factors, and that's the sales price. And your equipment is not worth anything. Your customer list is not worth anything. It's the bottom line that matters. And again, where we were really lucky, the perfect buyer showed up. It was a unicorn deal. I have no doubt that the hand of a higher power was on us because everything went perfectly. As far as selling the business went, we we reinvested the money. We had a solid income coming in. We had a plan for after he was disease free, which unfortunately never came to fruition. We moved from California to Texas. We changed our lives completely. And unfortunately, about 6 months into that big change, he passed away. And here's why the simple IRA, no, the 401k saved my life. It was because we had so much more money saved, and I could convert his 401k into cash as quickly as I needed to or wanted to. And that gave me time to reset my life, to go through what I needed to go through. It meant that, excuse me, meant that I could go through my grieving process without having to have a full-time job, without having to punch a clock. I could do what we planned, and which was we had moved the money out of the business into rental properties, and I was managing the rental properties, and that got me through between the 401k and that it got me through. And something that I never expected to happen was this huge change that came on me. Um, this is a totally different subject for a podcast, but grief changes you. Having a huge life change, whether it is a death, a passing, uh, you lose a key team member to another job, they want to change paths, whatever that might look like. Um, you end up in a divorce, uh, uh, the person who you plan to be your second in command and or buy the business no longer wants to do that, they change their mind and go off in a different direction. All of those things trigger a grieving process because whatever version of the future you were looking at died. So, how does that wrap around to me being an automotive coach and being here today with you to discuss these things at length and in depth? Um, it's that I went on a very deep journey of self growth and understanding. I can look back and see where I wish I had done better. I wish I'd been a better leader. I grew up in the Genghis Khan School of Management, which is very similar to the pirate, which is, the beatings continue until the morale improves, or do it because I said so. Um, I was evolving as a leader. I had gotten very deeply into, being very thankful for my team, helping, getting to understand where their shortcomings were and trying to help them work through those rather than being upset with them for um, not being who I needed them to be, but appreciating for who they were and playing to their strengths. Um, I think we always had our customer service dialed in. I think we always knew that they were the ones who actually paid the bills, and so they were our first priority. We had great suppliers, we had great industry partners that we worked with, and I just wish now I'd been a better leader for my team. And that kind of growth, that kind of acceptance, that kind of understanding is one of the biggest shifts that I've had, is that our team members have to be our first priority, close tie with our customers. But I almost think our team needs to come first, and we need to know our team. We need to be with them. We need to know them and understand them, knows what makes them tick. We might be the first one who ever asks them what they want to be when they grow up. A lot of them, just like I accidentally became a shop owner, accidentally became technicians or shop or service advisors. And they're kind of wondering, where does this go? I've learned a lot about engagement. I've learned about what it takes in this modern world to be a leader in our business, and that honestly is where we're most challenged. Everybody's got it in them. The question is, how do you develop that in yourself, and then how do you develop it with your team? We also have a bunch of really, really wonderful technicians who decided they want to be shop owners and don't know what it is to be a shop owner, don't understand that now you've become the HR department and the bookkeeping department and the this department, the marketing and the planning, and the you have to have a succession plan. What if something happens? What if a key player is lost? What if you pass away? What if you lose a spouse? Whatever that looks like, life changes on a dime. My life changed on one phone call and one 7-letter word. It's an 8-letter word. Anyway, it changes quickly, and we have to have some plans. We have to have an idea of where we're going to go. So succession's another passion of mine. How do we make our business live beyond us if we need to? Whether it's because we're taken away to do something else, or our passion dies, or whatever it might be, how do we make that happen? There's also a big trend in the coaching industry to pull technician owners out of the bays and make them a business owner. And my argument for that is that, what if the driving passion in their business is the fact that they turn wrenches, is the fact that they are really, really good at diagnostics? We can't take that away from them. They need to take both time in the bays and time with their owner's hats on in order to have the best of both worlds. And I truly believe we can find ways for them to have it. We also need to educate our business owners and our technicians and our advisors, our whole team, on financial planning. We need to help them see the future. We need to be there to mentor them and help them understand there's more to life than living paycheck to paycheck, and that investing in training, investing in the time in themselves, and us investing the time and the money in training and the time training them is also important, and also giving them a great deal of security in their work, moving away from flat rate work, which creates a lot of instability, creates a lot of survival type behaviors within the shop. We need to work on that as well. So I'm a bit of a Swiss Army knife. I'm going to take you down some roads and paths maybe you haven't thought of. Maybe you have thought about a great deal. Maybe we'll find together some ingenious solutions. But my whole goal in bringing Shop Talk Her Way to fruition is that we help everyone in the shop, in the bays, on the ground, and ultimately their families and their community become better because we've become better at managing our people, leading our teams, and loving them until it's weird. You'll hear me say that on more than one occasion. Sometimes we've got to love our team until it gets weird and they're looking at us going, what the heck is going on here? I just want my paycheck. But that level of understanding, that level of engagement from an owner level to becoming a mentor and a leader within the shop space, that's really the secret sauce. That's how we get the shops that we want. So my goal is to help you have your shop your way. So ultimately, I want to thank you for indulging me with your time, letting me give you a chance to know me better, to get a flavor for what we're going to be talking about over hopefully a long and fruitful relationship. I'd love to have your comments. I'd love to have your feedback. Let me know what themes you'd like to hear, what you have questions about, what we can address. Um, there's so much for us to talk about and so many places that we can work. And there's no one size fits all. Every shop's going to be different because every owner is different, every team is different. And so we have to find the solutions that work for you guys. And hopefully I can be a voice in the wilderness, to be a guide, to give you a place to expand some thinking. And it's really, really important that we do learn to grow and expand. We cannot stand on the platitude of, well, this is how we've always done it, or that won't work in my shop. There are ways to make things work. There are ways to help our teams grow. So, once again, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you for all that you do for the industry. You've already taken a huge step by just taking the time to listen to this podcast and finding other podcasts like it. I'd love for you to be a growing part of our community of leaders in the automotive industry who are done settling for chaos and are ready to build businesses that actually work for them. Again, deep gratitude to WorldPAC and the WorldPAC Training Institute for backing this mission and for their commitment to stronger leadership at every counter, in every bay, and at every level of our industry. If this episode reignited your passion for what you do, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who you think is ready to run their business with more clarity, confidence, and intention. Because the whole industry gets better when we do it together. Until next time, I'm JeanAnn SaintGrace, reminding you are here for a reason. Stop surviving, start thriving in your shop, your way. Thank you so much.